Stanley Kubrick is one of the most influential and enigmatic filmmakers in cinema history. His work spans genres, eras, and styles without ever losing a distinct identity, recognizable through his visual precision, obsessive attention to detail, and a deeply critical view of the human condition. Kubrick didn't make films to entertain. He made them to provoke, question, and force the viewer to look again. From war to science fiction, from horror to historical drama, each of his films functions as a moral and aesthetic experiment. His cinema doesn't offer simple answers, only persistent questions. For this reason, Kubrick is more than a director. He is an architect of worlds. Cold, symmetrical, beautifully unsettling worlds where characters often face systems larger than themselves: power, technology, violence, or desire. In this video essay, we will explore how Kubrick built a filmography that remains uncomfortably relevant. Kubrick began his career as a photographer for Look magazine, and that training left a permanent mark on his way of seeing. Every frame seems designed as a standalone photograph, balanced, calculated, yet charged with internal tension. In films like Paths of Glory or Barry Lyndon, visual composition is not only aesthetic, but also narrative. The positioning of bodies, the distance between characters, and the depth of space convey as much as dialogue. Kubrick understood that cinema is, above all, a visual language. That is why he often relied more on images than on words. This approach led him to create nearly silent sequences where silence, music, and camera movement communicate complex emotions. His camera is never neutral. It observes, judges, and sometimes condemns. Watching a Kubrick film is accepting that every shot carries hidden intention. One of the central themes in Kubrick's work is violence, not as spectacle, but as a reflection of a society that normalizes it. In A Clockwork Orange, violence is stylized, almost choreographed, which makes it even more disturbing. Kubrick does not allow us to consume it without guilt. He forces us to question why we are drawn to it. In Full Metal Jacket, war is presented as a process of systematic dehumanization, where individuals become tools. Violence does not arise from madness alone, but from structures that foster it. Kubrick shows that the problem is not only the aggressor, but the system that produces him. This cold, almost clinical gaze unsettled many viewers, but it also turned his cinema into an uncomfortable mirror of our own society. The relationship between humans and technology is another fundamental axis of his filmography. 2001. A Space Odyssey is not just a science fiction film, but a philosophical meditation on evolution, consciousness, and control. HAL 9000, the computer that turns against its creators, is not a traditional villain, but a logical consequence of blind faith in technological perfection. Kubrick poses a troubling question. What happens when our creations surpass our moral capacity? The coldness of the spaces, the slow pacing, and the classical music reinforce the sense of human smallness in the face of what we have built. Rather than offering a heroic future, Kubrick presents a future that is silent, beautiful, and profoundly lonely. In The Shining, Kubrick explores terror not as an external monster, but as an internal force. The Overlook Hotel is not only haunted, it is an amplified reflection of human madness. Jack Torrance does not descend into insanity because of the hotel. The hotel allows him to express what he already carries inside. The endless corridors, geometric carpets, and obsessive symmetry create a sense of artificial order that hides chaos. Kubrick uses space as an extension of his characters' minds. The horror does not arise from jump scares, but from waiting, silence, and repetition. The Shining becomes more psychological than supernatural. Kubrick was also interested in power and ambition. In Barry Lyndon, he tells the story of the rise and fall of a common man trying to conquer a world that does not belong to him. The film is visually majestic, lit with natural light, and composed like 18th century paintings. Yet behind that beauty lies deep melancholy. Kubrick shows that power does not guarantee identity, happiness, or meaning. Barry achieves what he desires, but loses what he never truly valued. This contradiction summarizes much of Kubrick's cinema. Outward success often hides inner emptiness. The visual elegance functions as a disguise for silent tragedy. Another distinctive feature of Kubrick is his work with actors. Famous for repeating scenes dozens of times, he sought to break traditional acting to achieve a more mechanical, real, and unsettling expression. This is especially evident in Eyes Wide Shut, where characters seem to move within a lucid dream, emotionally detached but trapped by desire. The film is not just about sex, but about the fragility of relationships, fantasy, and identity. Kubrick suggests we never truly know the person next to us, or even ourselves. The mask, both literal and symbolic, is one of the enduring symbols of his cinema. Kubrick never rushed to please. His narrative pace is slow, deliberate, almost challenging. He forces the viewer to observe, think, and feel discomfort. In an industry dominated by instant entertainment, Kubrick defended cinema as an intellectual and emotional experience. Each of his films seems to say, "Look closely, nothing here is accidental." His obsession with total control turned him into an almost mythical figure, isolated, perfectionist, misunderstood, and admired at the same time. Yet that isolation allowed him to create uncompromising works, loyal only to his vision. Kubrick's influence on contemporary cinema is immense. Directors like Christopher Nolan, Denis Villeneuve, and David Fincher have acknowledged his direct impact. His use of music, silence, symmetry, and ambiguous storytelling continues to be studied in film schools. However, Kubrick did not leave a style to imitate, but an attitude, the courage to experiment, to unsettle, and to trust the viewer's intelligence. His films do not age because they do not belong to a trend. They belong to a constant inquiry into who we are and where we are going. Stanley Kubrick left no answers, only films that continue to breathe with every new viewing. His cinema is a labyrinth where each viewer finds a different reflection. Perhaps that is why it remains so relevant, because it does not tell us what to think, but forces us to think. In a world saturated with fast images and simple messages, Kubrick reminds us that cinema can be art, philosophy, and mirror at once. Watching one of his films is not just an aesthetic experience, but an act of reflection. And perhaps therein lies his true legacy, teaching us that cinema, when taken seriously, can change the way we see the world.